Welcome back for episode 218 of the Working Fans Podcast. And tune into our YouTube channel tonight because we are releasing the 531 on Vince McMahon's worst ideas. And coincidentally, next week we are bringing back a live 531 on Tony Khan's worst ideas. And today we have the man called Dave, AJ Strangebrew, and I would say arguably one of Tony Khan's worst recent ideas, and I don't know if it's going to make the list, is Tony Khan on Twitter. So guys, take it away.
All right.
I'm surprised that his worst idea isn't that haircut. Jesus.
I do love the picture that Joe picked up for this.
Looks like a rabid, Muppet.
This is excellent. All right, so I'm going to read this tweet here, and then we'll get back to our smiling faces. Tony Khan, let me just move on, I guess, after this week has decided. I'm sorry. Okay, let me get back to this. So Tony Khan says this week, 2 active decade-long rated streaks from 2 great legends were ended. With all due respect, until last week's head-to-head AEW on TBS versus WWE on USA, WWE, neither John Cena or The Undertaker ever been on a WWE show where viewers were under 1 million or 400K in the demo. It just does not come off like sore loser. And what I mean by that is we know they jacked up the show. Anybody with a common, sense knows that. Why did you have to take this low road and respond like this? It just made him look bad.
First of all, I'm not sure what you mean by jack up the show. I mean, just because they had the most popular star of right now and the two of the greatest of all time and the best man, they didn't do crap. It's fine. But that being said, Tony Khan, stay the hell off of Twitter. What is wrong with you? When you say and make a comment like this, it makes your own fans want to actually not back you up.
Yeah.
Even your own fans are going, what the hell, man? We all know they jacked up the other show.
Yeah.
Guess what? Those of us that are fans, we still watched your show.
Yeah.
Once who you lost, the reason why your numbers dropped is because you have people who it's a Wednesday night ritual that they tune into your show. Half of them probably, even with you saying in the show because of fast forwarding, didn't know you were on Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, personally, I love wrestling. I want all wrestling to do well, and I don't think it's the end of the world. But I would not consider this a big win for anybody. When all the buzz going on, I was thinking, man, NXT might do over 1 million, and AEW is going to do about 800, 900. Nope, NXT did just under 1 million, and AEW did 6, and I'm like, oh, okay, so not that many people cared.
Plus, nobody's tuning in next week because of who was on NXT this week. Nobody who tuned in to see The Undertaker or John Cena is tuning in next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about some stuff NXT and AEW did in our next segment. But, yeah, I would just say, bringing it back to Tony Khan for me here, he had made a comment. I think somebody said this might have been a little bit of a Curb Your Enthusiasm kind of reference. But he called Triple H and HBK bald-headed assholes, which makes me giggle, but still not a good look. You know what I mean? Hunter may occasionally make a comment in a documentary or something, but you don't see Hunter going all over Twitter because he's punching down. They didn't trumpet. Did you hear them going? They didn't even go, oh, yeah, we won the ratings. No, you don't hear about a ratings war or something like that.
So the best person that I heard talk about this was actually Booker T on his show.
Okay.
Booker T on his show said one of the big problems WCW had in the Monday Night Wars was that they were constantly trying to compete with the WWE. That instead of giving the great product that they had and focusing on what they were and just staying in their lane and doing what they do, they could have maintained and still been a successful company. They need the company that is AEW to do the same thing. If AEW keeps doing what they're doing, they're falling into the same trap that WCW did. Be who you are, be who you started to be, aim towards your fans, and take what growth you get.
Well, that's some excellent advice by Booker. Can't disagree. At the end of the day, I think we're all in agreement. Tony Khan, stay off of Twitter. However,
absolutely. Somebody needs to steal that man's phone.
go ahead,
Guys,
Joseph.
I also have a question before we move on to our next subject. Have either of you seen the trailer that was released this week for the upcoming Iron Claw movie?
I did. It looks
I
excellent.
saw the trailer and I saw a comment by Marshall Von Erich.
Oh, what did Marshall say? Do you remember?
So Marshall Von Erich said that while he has already seen the trailer and seen the production values, he said that the story is actually really well done considering the Von Erichs were not in on the making of the movie, that Kevin Von Erich was not involved in it and that it's not due. He said that they actually did a really classy version of it and that it doesn't come off untrue. He said there are some things obviously that are made for the movie that are stretched, but he said overall they stayed pretty true to the story.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that they tackled the motorcycle accident in the trailer. You can see Carrie, the person who plays Carrie, going on a motorcycle and stuff, and all these different things happening. Where you can say it's definitely going to tackle obviously a lot of dark subjects, which of course is just the Von Erich legacy. There's a lot of dark things.
Well, the great thing is that they had even without having the Von Erichs involved per se, having Kevin involved, there's so much material out there, documentaries, people that were involved and that were there. You have so much to put into it without even having Kevin involved that it was pretty much a layup.
Yeah, there was one thing, I believe it was former guest of the show, Brian Solomon, wrote on Facebook that he said he doesn't care like if liberties are taken because it's not a documentary, it's more of a biopic. And it's as long as the story's there. And for me, just what that trailer did in presenting what the story is going to look like, anything in ring looks amazing. So far, the people that they've gotten to play these various other characters in the Von Erich world seem decent. We'll see how they actually look in the movie. But I have high hopes for this movie after seeing that trailer.
I think AJ, you muted yourself, but yeah, I think that it'll just be interesting to see if this does anything to help wrestling or anything. You know what I mean? If there's any buzz of this, like if WWE or AEW, if anyone's going to get any buzz off of this movie, I kind of wonder if we'll gain some new wrestling fans or if people will be turned off the real life story, or it's just going to end up being just a good movie.
Well, the fact of it is the Von Erich story has the arc that you need for a movie. It has the triumphs, it has the tragedy, and then it has triumph again. And then I think, quite frankly, Kevin surviving and raising his children, Ross and Marshall, the way he has and how productive they are, is the final real story to this, is that they did come through the other side and as a successful family, and they transitioned through all this tragedy.
It'll be interesting to see if they present it like that, because I mean, much like life, you can look at it as one of two ways. You can look at it as all of Kevin's brothers died and now he's alone when family meant so much to him, or you can look at it as Kevin is the one that survived all this, and then look at the family kind of unit now he is set up with his sons, and you can see with their grandchildren when they were living in Hawaii and then recently bringing it back to Texas. I think it's all in how the subject matter is handled, and we'll see how wrestling fans take that.
Well, and let's face it, we've had a whole nother generation now of Von Erichs, starting with Lacey and now with Ross and Marshall, where there has not been tragedy. So knock on wood, let's hope it continues on that way.
By the way, one thing about that too, Fritz came off looking crazy. Like, I will say that in the trailer, which I mean, there's a lot of stories about Fritz, but it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, I can see where his character is probably going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, it seems right now like Fritz is looking every bit the person that the stories have portrayed him as over the years. And who knows if it's representative of who he actually was. But I mean, from what we've seen, pushing his kids to that degree, maybe it could just be a wrestling father thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Well, it'd
I
be
don't
like
remember
trying.
Dory Funk talking that like harshly about his father. I mean, he would say his father stood up for the business, and I think with the Funks, they just more admired their father and wanted to follow in his footsteps. With the Von Erichs, it's maybe a little bit of that, and then it became a family business. Like, how are they going to discuss the two younger Von Erichs that weren't even cut out to be in wrestling, but they wanted to live up to their brothers and get in that ring and didn't live through it?
Joe, while I love the Funks, if you're going to compare them to another family, you've got to compare them to the Hart Foundation. I mean, you have parallels between Stu and obviously Fritz Von Erich. Both of them were superstars. Both of them very much put their children into the business, having their own organizations. Both of them had tremendous tragedies in their family, whether it's Owen, Davey Boy as a brother-in-law, whether it's Jim Neidhart dying young as a brother-in-law, how he tried to put people who didn't belong in the business that were sons into the business. That's where the parallels lie, is between the Hart family and between the Von Erichs.
True. The Funks are maybe closer to like a Hennig family where it was like a successful father. I was thinking more about the ownership, but yeah, Stu Hart had that thing where he's revered and like the stories paint him a little bit crazy.
Yeah, you could easily make Stu Hart into a maniac. The way he would take people into his dungeon and just beat the crap out of them and stretch them for hours. I mean, you literally could make this guy into a monster.
Hey guys, how about this for a segue? When you started talking about the Harts, I couldn't help but think about Brian Pillman. And Brian Pillman, I'm thinking about Brian Pillman Jr., who debuted on NXT this week in a video package. We finally saw Brian Pillman Jr. I think he's going to be going as...
I'm pretty sure you mean Lexus King.
He did not say Lexus. That is the rumor, but he did say King. That's the name of it. But we're talking NXT versus AEW this week, how the two shows stacked with each other. AJ, I'll start with you. You're a big proponent of NXT and how it's grown on you. You always support AEW. I watched both these shows at the same time. Not the best way to do it. So what did you take away from what you saw? And then I'll tell you mine as a guy who was watching everything at the same time.
I watched them both, but I watched one right after the other so that I could really focus on them. I watched AEW first. AEW, I figured would need the rating help, so I was right on that. A good show, solid show. Saw two titles change hands. I'm intrigued why Saraya's run has come to an end so fast.
Yeah.
Maybe her body just can't take the physical demands yet of having to be champion every week. That's speculation. I'm not actually suggesting that that's a fact, but I'm just saying maybe that's one of the things that led to it. Hikaru Shida, 3-time champion now. Jon Moxley, not medically cleared yet from that concussion, which is ironic because he give Hangman Page a hard time for taking so long to be medically cleared from his concussion. Just saying. But Orange Cassidy, who has wrestled every week and has busted his ass, is back and won back the international championship. So that's really cool. I thought it was a loaded card. I thought Danielson and Strickland delivered. Was there anything lacking from this show that you?
There's one other big thing I have to say we have to make notice of too. Powerhouse Hobbs went over Jericho. Jericho put him over. There was no cheating or anything. Powerhouse Hobbs.
I was actually going to save that to the end. That was one of the two things that I wanted to talk about at the end is how well they put Hobbs over. We could talk about it now, obviously. How well they put Hobbs over. Jericho doesn't need any kind of rub. So putting him over Jericho this way does not hurt Jericho. All it does is make for a great storyline and puts over Hobbs huge. I mean, obviously, the other thing that we have to talk about later on is what happened with Juice Robinson and MJF, since that is everywhere on Twitter now, how he took out the roll of quarters and put MJF's name on it. With what happened in Israel, that has made huge news throughout the world.
Yeah, poor timing, I would say, on that. Thank you, Michael. Good video. We appreciate that, man. I think poor timing on AEW's part. I know Max has said out there that, hey, you know what? Trust us. Don't, because of Westland's done in the past. Trust me. we could tell this story in a good way. And I heard somebody recently comment this, I think on Fightful, that it's up to Tony, and no matter what MJF says, you shouldn't be doing this right now. He says things I avoid just from a business standpoint, religion and politics, because you're going to eventually turn off a portion of your fan base. And with the timing of everything going on in Israel, you couldn't have picked a worse time to try this angle.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, we don't know when they came up with this angle. They could have nixed it the same day. We know the WWE has a tendency of changing things right up to the minute. But it is really poor timing. We'll see what they do this week. I mean, obviously with Battle Royal coming up and with all of the stuff coming up, MJF's going to have a chance to really get Juice Robinson and to make up for it. So let's hope they go in that direction.
We'll see. That, and of course, it was the debut of Adam Copeland as a wrestler. He beat Luchasaurus. I felt this was kind of an afterthought. At the end of the day, I have to say this. I would want to point out something about Luchasaurus, though, real quick. And I think this could be an effect Adam Copeland has on the roster, too. That could be a good thing. But ever since Luchasaurus has gotten together with Christian Cage, is he wrestling more like a big man than in the past and a monster? Like, I feel like he's really in-wing wise changed his game, and I think it's for the better.
Oh, absolutely. He's one of those wrestlers who I always tell people, as a former wrestler, this is my advice to you. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you need to.
Right.
One of the worst things you could do in a match is do things that are unnecessary. It's just like wrestling too fast. You want to be able to tell the story in the ring, and you want it to make sense. If you're in there with a guy who's half your size and you're demonstrating as a large man that you can do a moonsault, what is the point?
Absolutely. No, we talked a lot about AEW. Let's talk about the other side now, too, for a second. NXT, they had a loaded show, a lot of appearances. We've had, John Cena show up. Cody Rhodes made several announcements. Cody Rhodes talked about we're going to have a male breakout star tournament. We're going to have the Dusty Classic back. Cody announced he was the GM for the night. He made that Dragunov Dominic Mysterio match. I thought it was an interesting point somebody made, too, that when Dragunov eventually comes to the main roster, a lot of his matches are probably going to look like this because not everybody's going to want to do the hard-hitting, beat the crap out of you style that he likes to do. You will get the occasional people that do. I think that's a shout-out to Gunther. But, it was interesting. That being said, Dragunov still looks like $1 million to me. This guy, I love his presentation all. They had a small video segment a lot of people didn't talk about, but it was with Laya Valkyrie and Becky Lynch coming up, where they did a really good job of comparing their journey together, how they were both from Ireland and had, Becky had inspired Laya a few times, and it was very fascinating. And then another thing NXT did do well, talk about reversal. AEW always usually lets us know what's coming up. I think at the end of it, they'd announced one match for Collision and one match, the Battle Royal coming up for next week's Dynamite. NXT had they announced Tegan Knox versus Valkyrie next week, Dijak versus Baron Corbin versus Carmella Hayes, when the winner's supposed to be a number one contenders match, and we have more of the women's breakout. I was like, this feels like a real reversal here, where, now NXT is setting up stuff for the following week. Which, by the way, when you have all this talent on the show, like a John Cena, who you put him in there with Trick and Carmelo, and then The Undertaker at the end of it, he probably didn't do a lot of good for Braun Breaker, but, given his nod of approval to Carmelo Hayes.
No, wait a minute here.
Yeah.
Let's be fair to The Undertaker here, because while he went over Braun Breaker, he did put Braun Breaker over. He did tell him, one day you're going to be the badass. He just said, today's not your day.
Right.
So he did give him the nod.
It was a fight. It wasn't like it was a wrestling match where Taker just came back, pinned him 1, 2, 3, get the hell out of here. It was a fight. And honestly, it was a sucker punch too.
So let's be fair to Braun on this one.
Absolutely.
Also, I want to mention something because you mentioned the three-way dance that's going to be coming up.
Yes.
I'm not big on this three-way dance. I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
One, I wanted to see something new, but something new to me is not Dijak or Baron Corbin. So now I'm actually pulling for a trilogy between Carmelo Hayes and Dragunov. So they've actually made me want to see that again.
You're probably right, and they probably are going to do the trilogy, and maybe the loser is going to go up to the main roster. Maybe the timing of this couldn't be any better when you think about it, because
and the thing is, either one of these guys are ready to go to the main roster, if not both of them.
Absolutely. Hold on a second here, guys. We got, and the Royal Rumble's coming up too, right? So you got the Royal Rumble coming up, so maybe we will see a Carmelo Hayes or somebody like that in there.
Well, Dragunov would be interesting in the Royal Rumble because it's a chance for him to show in his size how much power he has throwing people over the top ropes.
Absolutely. But now, hey, before we get to the next segment, let's just one more thing, AJ. Pick an overall show. Who was better for you? AEW, NXT this week, just from a quality show. Forget the ratings.
Well, for me, for a quality of show, I'm actually going to go with NXT this week. Mm-hmm. I did enjoy AEW. But for me, it was so well put together because a lot of times when you have those stars come in, it could be discombobulated. And they did a good job of still sticking to the storylines and making the veterans actually fit into the storylines.
Absolutely. All right. And speaking of veterans, veteran of the show, producer Joe, I think you were chiming in. No, WWE Fastlane was this past weekend. WWE Fastlane. AJ, what did you think of this show? Anything that sticks out from your memory? It feels like a lifetime ago after having so much wrestling this week.
Well, first of all, on a personal note, I would like to actually say, if you're going to actually get yourself into the fast lane, you should actually make sure that you're using Dubby. I use Calio Cream. It's my favorite one. It gets me going in the fast lane, gets my blood pumping without all the jitters. If you go to Dubby.gg and you use the code FANSWORKING, you're going to save 10% off your total order. Yes, fans, 10%. And then you can be pumped up like your man AJ Strangebrew here on the Working Fans Podcast. And Dave, now let's talk some Fastlane.
Let's talk some Fastlane, baby. Absolutely. Fastlane was this past Saturday. And boy, AJ, I think what was really interesting about this show was the tag team match that kicked it off. I think this was the most eventful part of the whole show. Jey Uso, Cody Rhodes won the tag team titles. To your credit, AJ, you called this. You said Cody and Jey would win it. They did. I think the most entertaining part of this tandem, though, was, for anyone who didn't see it, was the press conference afterwards where Jey and Cody, as Cody said, might have had a few libations.
Well, they definitely had a few libations, but it also made for a fun press conference. The match itself was outstanding. I saw it coming just because it's a way for them to actually go back and forth between SmackDown and Raw. Sure. But the press conference afterwards, they definitely were loose. They were ready to go, answering questions. Their answers didn't always make sense because of the libations, but it was definitely a fun press conference and a good way to start off Fastlane. It definitely got things going into first gear, ready to go into second gear.
And I would say, again, the most noteworthy thing that came out of this event, and then the second most noteworthy thing was probably in the second match. AJ, we both got this wrong. We said that last year the Street Profits would walk over the LWO, but as I read this, it said online that they were still waiting to see which member of the LWO was going to be in there with Ray and Santos. And we're looking at the tag team, and they're like, no, they're taken out of the game. Now we have a mystery partner. We find out on SmackDown, like, well, that could mean something different. And then that mystery partner is Carlito, who comes in at the end of the match.
Even if they got the whole tag team together, I still would have picked the other ones. But Carlito, that adds a whole new thing. And how jacked does Carlito look? Carlito has not missed a day in the gym. I did hear, however, and I would like to mention this, he might not actually be part of the LWO. He might have been teaming up with him there, but I heard speculation that the goal for him is actually to go on a singles run.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think that's a great idea. I have no problem with that. Maybe a three-way between these three competitors too, Ray and Santos for the United States Championship. So
Carlito has always had every tool. Obviously, learning under the learning tree that is Carlos Colon Sr., he had every tool, every opportunity to learn, and he has taken advantage of that. The one knock on him is that he's always been too laid back for the WWE atmosphere. I think he'll do better in today's WWE than he did a decade ago.
He's a different person now. He's older now too. Like most of us.
He's mature. He's ready to go.
Yeah. Elsewhere on this guy, Io Sky, she successfully defended that title in a triple threat match. This one you did not call. You thought Charlotte Flair. You actually, even Asuka, you said you were thinking, but Sky comes out on top. Not really much else to talk about here. We'll see what happens. John Cena and LA Knight were victorious. Again, continuing that LA Knight rub, which is really good. And
I don't think that surprised anybody. I think that bringing John Cena back and having LA Knight together, nobody actually saw the other guys going over. It will cause an interesting SmackDown for tonight with Roman Reigns coming back.
Absolutely. And John Cena did point out a press conference. Somebody did ask him that, this actors strike and writer's strike could be coming to an end soon. So we'll see how long Big Match John is here for. But
an interesting thing is John also came out this week and apologized to The Rock for their time together when Rock first came back, because he said he has a much better understanding now of what The Rock was going through, and he felt like he was a little immature at the time and he took it out on The Rock.
Absolutely. And then one more thing about Fastlane. At the end of it, Seth Rollins did defeat Shinsuke Nakamura. I just thought at the end of the day, me and you disagreed on this one. It wasn't Shinsuke's time. I wish it was, personally. Like I told you that last week, because I thought a great time. But at the end, Seth is still the champ. But overall, great matchup.
I went with my heart instead of my gut. I really wanted Shinsuke to win. And never go with your heart, always go with your gut.
Yeah. Well, overall, fun show. Very good show. Let's talk about good shows. Let's talk about the creative direction here. Came out this week, a report that Triple H, Endeavor wants Triple H in control, and they put Triple H in control of creative, and he's permanently in that spot right now. I don't know.
Why would you not look at where they've gone over the last year with Triple H in control? They're through the roof in every market that they go to. They're setting records everywhere they go. Why would you not keep Triple H in control right now?
Absolutely. And if anybody's thinking, well, Vince is still in charge, yeah, on somewhat. But is Vince staying out of the creative? Gotta be. Let's look at the product. It's a completely different product than it was a year and a half ago. And I mean, look at this. Look at the guys who are starting to get pushed now all of a sudden. DIY is back, right? We're focused on Gargano and Ciampa. Bronson Reed is now, as a heel, getting an Intercontinental title match against another heel. I'm super excited for that match, by the way. And
that's going to be a slobber knocker.
Yeah, and Gunther itself, too. There's another guy that, Triple H was really fond of. This weekend, that push. And just longer storytelling. Like, things are not just over like they used to be in a matter of weeks.
Look at the story with Drew McIntyre.
Yeah. Perfect.
Talk about drawing out a story and building it. They're not making him a heel. They're not keeping him as that happy-go-lucky baby face. They are really building this out, showing why he's slowly turning. They're making him make judgments in specific situations. The reason why he helps is because is helping him, not because it's helping just to be a baby face. They're doing a great job with the Drew McIntyre turn.
Absolutely. And any good antagonist usually has to have a good motivation where you can almost understand where they're coming from. Drew's is almost too good.
Well, here's another one for you. And this was a quick one, and this was actually on NXT this week. The just quick glimpse into Paul Heyman talking to The Rock's daughter, Ava Raine. That's just a little wink there of going, hey, look, Paul Heyman's talking to her, because technically she fits into the bloodline.
Absolutely.
If the bloodline's going to feud with, let's say, Rhea Ripley's group, they need a young lady to face Rhea Ripley. She fits into the bloodline.
Absolutely. You could even do longer storytelling than that. She could maybe come up to the main roster, beat Io Sky, and you could be doing a unification match at Mania. Who knows?
Or she comes into the bloodline, and the storyline could be The Rock doesn't like how Roman is treating his daughter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of different things you can do. There's long-term storytelling. There's better options. Creatively, TKO, at Endeavor, they're making the right decision if Triple H is indeed the permanently creative guy. He has shown in the past he is a student of the game, no pun intended. And
but you also have the communication now, because you have HBK in control of NXT.
Oh, yeah. Best friend.
So the communication between the two of them, they're doing a great job of building the NXT talent to be ready, but they're also doing a great job of building the storylines between NXT and the main shows.
And now there's communication, you feel like confidently that it's not just we're going to build up somebody in NXT and then they're going to do whatever they want with them at the main roster. Now I feel like confident that like if HBK is confident in somebody and they're building them up on NXT, they're probably talking to Triple H directly and they have long-term plans for that person.
And how different is it than maybe 2 years ago when Triple H had his heart attack or his heart episode?
Absolutely.
How different is it between now and then when Triple H was gone, there was no control over NXT, all of a sudden we're NXT 2.0,
Right.
There doesn't seem to be any connection between the two brands. And now within those 2 years with Triple H in control of creative and HBK in full control of NXT, we've got something that is really building momentum.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of creative in WWE, you want to talk about creative possibilities. Let's talk about the possibilities of CM Punk to the WWE. Whether this is going to happen or not, I don't know. I was pulled into this thinking no way. Then I started hearing things like, oh, okay, maybe. And now I'm kind of leaning towards no again. But I will say this. Interesting moment. A couple weeks ago, Shawn Michaels, who was on NXT media call before No Mercy, they asked him. I think Shawn is great, by the way, on these. If you ever hear these, because he's too honest, he's probably going to get himself in trouble. But Shawn says they asked him, "Would you be interested in having a CM Punk at NXT?" He just laughs. He goes, "Would I be interested? Absolutely." He says, "I don't think that would be the plan if he's coming back, but would I use him on NXT?" Yes, he said, absolutely. And I had to laugh because Shawn said, look, I get along with him really well. He said, I understand him. He said, some people don't. He says, but he's not a guy that gets along well with everybody. He says, I've been that guy. He said, but what I know is that this is a guy I was talking to. He says, I think we were somewhere in the backstage area, and he pulled out a photo from 20 years ago of some picture I took with him real quick at a hotel. He's like, he's a fan. He loves this. He said, I would welcome working with him anytime. So, unfortunately, Shawn Michaels doesn't make the decision for this. I do believe that Punk does have a good relationship with Endeavor. However, I don't know if they're looking to make that kind of purchase or, especially coming off all the controversy that Punk had right now. Because WWE, quite frankly, it's hard to believe this, but WWE doesn't really need him right now. They don't, and it might not be worth the risk reward at this point.
They have no need whatsoever of CM Punk. For the first time, I can honestly tell you, CM Punk could stay retired right now, and there is nobody other than maybe Impact that needs him right now.
Right.
AEW didn't use him correctly. He didn't fit in there. They didn't have the structure to actually handle CM Punk, so they don't need him. Impact Wrestling could use him, absolutely. He would be a great star for Impact Wrestling. Only problem is they don't have a platform with enough television to be able to really exceed expectations of where you would go for the money that you would pay for CM Punk. WWE could bring him in. He'd be a great star for the WWE.
Sure.
But with what they have going on right now,
need him.
I think you're taking a step back.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't. I'm interested to say. I will say this: it's fun to have these rumors out there because it does add another element when Survivor Series does come to Chicago.
Sure.
And you don't know. So, but I will say this: WWE, it's a good problem to have. You're in a win-win situation because you don't need them. If you use them, you'll probably get some buzz.
The best thing you could do is CM Punk. If you're the WWE, you don't need him on a weekly basis. Put him on a deal like you have with Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
And bring him in sporadically for one-offs.
Sure.
You don't need a full-time storyline with CM Punk. You've got guys that have been kicking ass for the last 2 years, and you're doing long-term storylines with everybody. Keep CM on your bench where he belongs.
All right. So AJ says no to CM Punk being WWE.
I'm not even sure CM Punk, from what I saw in the ring in AEW, can keep up with the WWE anymore.
Yeah. We shall see. Hey, speaking of our CM Punk, producer Joe.
Well, the WWE may not need CM Punk, but I'll tell you what you need.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville. It's where wrestling lives.